My name is Judith. I'm 68 years old, and I live alone in the same house my late husband and I built together nearly 4 decades ago. It's the kind of house that creaks in the wind, with floors that remember every footstep and walls that hold more memories than I care to count. After Harold passed away, the silence of this house became something I had to learn how to live with, like an old coat that doesn't quite fit, but keeps you warm enough not to complain. This story isn't about grief, though. It's about something else. Something that caught me off guard one rainy afternoon in May. It started with a dress. A red one I hadn't worn in years. That morning I had woken up feeling strangely energetic, the way you do sometimes for no good reason. The sky was gray, the rain was soft, and the radio played old love songs that reminded me I was once young and foolish. On impulse, I opened the back of my closet and pulled out a silk dress Harold had given me on our 25th anniversary. It wasn't something you cleaned in, but I put it on anyway. Just for me. The fabric clung to me differently now. Softer in some places, looser in others. But I didn't mind. There was something rebellious about vacuuming in heels. I laughed to myself as I pushed the vacuum down the hallway, swaying to the music, pretending I was somewhere else. Somewhere far from the quiet ache of missing someone who never really left the room. Then came the knock. I thought it was the mailman, or maybe one of the neighborhood kids who always left flyers for fundraisers I never went to. I smoothed the front of my dress and opened the door. It wasn't a child. It wasn't the mailman. It was Thomas. Now you don't know Thomas, but he knew Harold. They worked together in the city long ago. I hadn't seen him in years. Maybe not since Harold's funeral. He looked the same, weathered, polite, always with that faint air of sorrow in his eyes. I didn't know why he was here. "Judith," he said, removing his hat like we were still living in the 1950s. "I hope I'm not interrupting." I wanted to say yes, you are. But something about the sincerity in his voice made me pause. He held an envelope in his hand. I was going through some of Harold's old things. Found this tucked away in a box labeled, "For Judith," one day. I didn't read it, of course. He handed it to me like it was fragile. I stood there, rain dripping behind him onto the porch, unsure of whether to invite him in. But I did. Made tea. Still in my red dress. And we sat in the living room, the letter unopened between us on the coffee table. It wasn't awkward. Not really. Just it. He told me about his life since retirement. I told him about the garden I kept in Harold's memory, the way the tulips still came up in the same crooked rows he planted them in. We talked like people who used to share stories but forgot how. Eventually he looked at me and said, "You know, Harold talked about you constantly. He adored you." I felt something twist in my chest. Grief, yes, but something else too. Guilt maybe, or longing. The letter was still there, waiting. When he left, he didn't try to hug me. He didn't linger. Just nodded politely and walked back into the rain. I stared at the envelope for a long time after the door closed. When I finally opened it, Harold's handwriting spilled across the page like he'd written it yesterday. He wrote about the day we first met. About my laugh. About how he always knew I would outlive him. And how that comforted him somehow. He asked me to keep living, not surviving but truly living. He asked me not to give up on joy. I cried quietly as the rain tapped against the windows. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in the red dress, remembering a version of myself I thought I had buried. And I made a promise, not to Harold but to me, to wear color again, to open the windows, to dance in the kitchen, to answer the door. A week later, I wore that same dress to the cafe in town. I saw Thomas there again, reading alone by the window. He looked up surprised and smiled. We didn't say much. Just a nod, 2 coffees, and the warmth of something unspoken between us. That was 3 months ago. Since then we've had many coffees. No expectations. No need for explanations. Just 2 people, moving slowly through life's quiet chapters. Grateful for the unexpected paragraphs.